Hello, welcome to another First Chapter Friday, or if you're tuning in for the One Book, One School choices for Furnace Brook Middle School. And this book is The Colors of the Rain, and is by first-time author R.L. Toalson. It's amazing. It is a book told in verse. It's about the past and some of the types of prejudices that people needed to put up with. However, it's not what you typically would think of. It is a book about a Caucasian boy who is making so many different life decisions, and he is very traumatized by some past things that have happened in his family. And then it becomes a book about kind of dealing with some assumptions that people make, and it's wonderful. So anyways, here we get going. It is a book that is, like I said, told in verse, and it doesn't quite have chapters. So I'm going to leave on I'm going to read up to page 32, which is the heading leaf. So chapter leaf or whatever. All right, and that's because I feel like it has a good dramatic ending. Spring of 1972. Rain. Most nights I sleep just fine, because most nights it doesn't rain. The last time it rained like this, we drove past that curve. Gran always called dangerous, and saw lights flashing red and blue, and people walking around, and a body covered with a white sheet that glowed in the dark. Mama didn't slow down long enough to look at that twisted car. It was too dark to see, anyhow. We didn't know who it was under the sheet, but Mama said a prayer for the family as we drove on by. Earth. Granddad came over last month and planted cabbage, yellow squash, peppers, and okra in the little square of dirt my daddy marked. Me and Charlie tried to tell him we don't like cabbage or yellow squash or peppers. We didn't mention the okra on account of Gran's fried okra, which is the best fried okra you've ever tasted. Granddad said those are the only vegetables that will grow in a Texas garden this time of year. He said, you never know when you'll need something to eat. And he just kept digging with his pale, spotted hands. Granddad says things like that all of the time. Mama said he lived through the Great Depression, back when a whole lot of people went hungry. I watched him the whole time he planted. He looked a lot like my daddy. Long legs folded up, head bent so I couldn't see, the white of his hair, overalls pulled tight across his back. He touched the earth like it was alive. Night. The night my daddy left us, after we drove past that dangerous curve and thought it had nothing to do with us, a black sky dropped cold water blankets on me and Charlie and Mama while we stood in the dark trying to understand what those flashing lights meant. I didn't sleep for 27 hours. Birthday. My Aunt B calls me Paulie. No matter how many times I tell her I'm too old for that nickname. John Paul Sanders Jr. is my real name, but Paulie is what she'd called my daddy. Tonight, she brought us supper, since it's Saturday, and Mama works late, waiting tables at a diner in town. She spreads it all out on the table greasy chicken and mashed potatoes and rolls so buttery. They leave gray rings on the white bag. She tears off the receipt with today's date, April 16th, 1972. Mama's birthday. She missed the Apollo 16 launch, just like she's missing supper. Aunt Bee knows Mama won't be home until later, she says. Go on then. And I dig in. Milo sits underneath the table, his long pink tongue hanging out, ears cocked towards Aunt Bee. She doesn't like it when we feed him with food from our table. She says it spoils dogs. I slip him a roll anyway. A chocolate cake waits for Mama in the icebox. Divorce. Aunt Bee's husband divorced her a long time ago, so she comes to see us a lot. Sometimes she washes dishes, and sometimes she sorts the clothes. Most of the time, she brings us suppers she didn't cook. When I asked, Mama said that Aunt Bee's husband didn't divorce her on account of her not knowing how to cook. Charlie. Charlie's hung some lights on the walls of the family room. Mama won't like the holes, but even I think that lights are pretty. Every other minute, Charlie looks at the clock, her white face glowing, red and then blue in the lights. Shouldn't she be here by now? She says. She only works till 7. Her voice shakes a little, and I feel it shake in my chest. Once a parent leaves, you wonder if it might happen again. She'll be here soon, Charlotte, Aunt Bee says. Mama says Charlie's a terrible nickname for a girl. I think it fits her just fine. Since Charlie's the only girl, I know who climbs trees higher than me and drives Granddad's tractor and swims in a dirty pond full of snakes. Aunt Bee puts her arm around Charlie, and even though she's 12, Charlie looks real small. Aunt Bee smiles at me. You'll lead the song? She says. She asked me once already. I think she's just trying to fill the space where Mama should be by now. Sing. My daddy used to sing all the time. Mama called it loud and obnoxious, but me and Charlie loved to hear him sing. He'd sing in the morning when he turned on our light to wake us up for school, and sometimes he'd sing in the evening when he turned it off. He was a good daddy on the nights he sang. I try not to think about the nights he didn't. Your daddy had a one-of-a-kind voice, Aunt Bee says. Lucky he passed it on to you. She whispers the last words, like it's something great to sing, like my daddy. He was in a band once. That's how Mama met him. He used to tell us the story. Back when we all ate supper together, how she showed up the night his band was playing at a bar, and he fell in love as soon as he saw her. He'd always wink at Mama when he'd said that. Fight. I do know my daddy liked bars too much. He was in a bar that night he left. I heard Mama tell Aunt Bee he was so drunk he beat a man to death. The man's friends chased him around that wet, dangerous curve. And when his car left the road, they shot him right in the heart 3 times. I guess they wanted to make sure he didn't get back up. I wasn't supposed to hear this, of course, but nobody ever tells me and Charlie anything. So we've learned to listen real good in doorways. I never did hear why my daddy fought in the first place. I sure would like to know that. Run. Mama walks through the door then, so I don't have to think about it anymore. I break into song with the voice of my daddy, and I'm halfway finished, almost to her name, before I realize no one else is singing. Charlie's crying on the couch, and Aunt Bee's walking Mama to the chair right beside my daddy's old one. No one sits in my daddy's chair anymore. Mama's black eyes are shiny, and her face is red. She leans her head back against the chair. Her brown hair stuck in strings across her cheeks. Paulie, why don't you go get your mama something to drink? Aunt Bee says. Shots. The day my daddy left for good, we sat on our porch waiting for him to come home like he always did. We watched for his electric blue Fairlane with rusted out doors and a droopy ceiling, and we listened for its tires popping over the gravel. I played with Milo that day, throwing a ball he'd always bring back, and Charlie rocked in the chair Granddad made her, and we tried not to notice the sun setting. The sky caught fire and started fading like it knew what was coming, and I wanted to get away. And then all those clouds rolled in real soft and quiet without warning, and before we knew it, everything around us turned black and wet. Mama packed us in Gran's car and took us looking, even though she always did the looking by herself. Maybe she knew what was coming too. Flashing lights were coloring our driveway when Mama pulled back in. I'd never seen Gran and Granddad run across the street like they did that night. Gran in her nightgown, shaking in the rain, shouting for her boy. Granddad pulled her, dripping to the porch, and held her while a different rain fell. Mama stood alone. I'd heard the shots right after the sky opened up. Mama says that can't be, seeing as that happened a whole 9 miles from our house. But I did. School. Me and Charlie went to school 4 days after that. On Friday, spelling test day. That week, we only had 9 words instead of the usual 10. I've never had only 9 words. I hate the number 9. It means something I don't understand. 9 miles left, almost home, and then gone. When I numbered my test, before my teacher called out the words, this is what I wrote. 1, my. 2, daddy. 3, isn't. 4, coming. 5, home. 6, He, 7, is 8, forever, 9, gone. I know it was wrong, but they were the only words that my hand would write. The day after that, Mama pulled me and Charlie out of school on account of our mental trauma. She didn't say we had no car anymore. I think she was ashamed of that part. Eyes. Daddy called his car my fair lady. Mama never had a car. Gran told Mama she could take us to school every day if Mama needed her to. But Mama said, no thank you. She'd teach us herself for a while. Mostly, she just leaves worksheets on the table and then forgets to ask if we did them. It's not right, those kids not getting school learning, Gran says. I don't mind so much not going to school. I never liked it anyhow. But Charlie, she goes looking for more worksheets when she's done. I don't want to get behind for when we go back, she says. I hope we never go back to school. You're crazy, I say when she's stacked more sheets on top of the ones Mama left us. At least I won't be dumb, she says. Charlie has these really blue eyes, like a clear winter sky. My daddy had those eyes, and they'd danced when he was laughing and when he raged too, so we never knew which one we'd get. Will I be dumb if I don't go to school? Well, that doesn't change my mind. I still don't want to go. Friends. Josh and Brian, my 2 oldest friends, used to stop by after school, and we'd run into the woods together until supper time. But after a few weeks, they stopped coming. They lived down the road, not even half a mile in either direction, so I still see them ride by on their bikes once in a while. I can usually hear them coming. I stopped shouting their names after the 4th time they passed by, like they hadn't even heard me. I reckon some kids think a daddy leaving is contagious. Milo. I don't need friends, though. I have Milo. Milo isn't big, and he isn't small. He has shiny black fur, 1 blue eye, and 1 brown one. That's how come I knew he belonged with us, because he had all our eyes in his too. My daddy brought him home from work one day. He said someone dropped him off and then just left. I can't imagine doing that to a puppy. Mama said we'd give him a home for a while, but I knew he'd stay for good. Woods. I'm Milo's favorite person. We wrestle and run together, but most of all we walk through the woods. Down to the dirty pond. Charlie jumped in once on a dare. Milo likes to swim in it. That's one thing I won't do with him. Snakes live in that black water. I've seen them heads bobbing, like little sticks. Only sticks don't float and turn to look at you, and then suddenly disappear. I love the woods because I can hear my daddy singing here, in the music of the birds, in the music of the trees, and in the music of me and Milo, crunching dried up pine needles under our feet. I think he lives here now, I haven't told Mama. She would look at me with those sad eyes, and then she'd cry herself to sleep. I don't like that kind of music. So I come here and let him sing to me like it's our secret. Smiles. Milo gets silly in the woods. Since it's cooler under the thick trees, it doesn't get too cold. In Houston, though, it's mostly wet, heavy air and hot rays of sun. That's one of the things I like best about it. Milo rolls onto his back, smashing needles and leaves underneath him. Legs pawing the air. I rub his belly, and he smiles at me. Most people don't know. Dogs can't smile. Milo smiles at me all the time, and I'm glad, since I don't see too many smiles anymore. When a daddy leaves, he takes all the smiles with him. Leaf. Come on, boy, I say. It's getting close to dark, and I promised Mama, after running off like I did on her birthday, that I wouldn't stay out here once the sun went down. She's never said sorry for coming home like she did, tripping about like my daddy used to do. Charlie says Mama is under a lot of stress on account of her job and Daddy leaving and the schoolwork she has to make sure we do. I think she adds that last part to make me feel guilty or something. And it works just a little. I did my work today before coming out here. I race Milo back through the trees toward home, and I can almost feel my daddy running right behind me the way he used to. When we're almost home, Milo's feet uncover a leaf shaped exactly like a teardrop. I pick it up and stuff it in my pocket so it doesn't crumble. Why do I pick it up? I reckon it's like me, different from all the others. I'm the only boy in town whose daddy was a criminal. Like I said, it's not, doesn't come in chapters. It continues the way I was just reading it. And most of the book continues on without as much focus on the loss of the dad. And you find, as time goes on, different revelations about this criminal aspect. And you see what the boy has to do. He and Charlie will change where they live and the school they go to and the type of acceptance and problems that they have once they get to another school. And then, like I said, you wind up finding out all sorts of interesting details. It's just so layered and interesting about that night with the dangerous curve and the fight. And you learn even more details that you didn't even know were a mystery. So it is really good and pretty quick reading, even though it's a lot of pages. So do give it a try for your one book, one school choice. And thank you for paying attention. And yeah, have a great week. Take care.